All right. Thank everyone for joining us here Friday afternoon. We're going to go through our advanced field training number 4 this year for configuration training. Um, Today we got Keith Camerood, who's been with Chromalox for quite some time, and we also have Sam Dobus, who's a global graduate engineer. Some of you have met both. Hopefully you've worked with them. But Keith's going to walk through our new configuration platform. Configurators, we refer to it. Keith, go ahead and advance there a little bit.
Okay.
And so he's here to, one, show us how to log in and use the platform. Some of you have already been using it, and that's great. Some of you haven't had exposure to it yet, and he's going to walk through that one more time. But more importantly than that, he's going to introduce us to the next 8 products that have now recently been added. So Keith, with that, all yours, buddy.
Okay. Thanks, Derek. Thanks everyone for joining. As some of you may have joined the first training session back in December, that was our initial rollout with 4 products. Now, as Derek said, we have 8 more products that have migrated. And those are boilers, the DIN controllers, flex heaters, ITLS panels, duct heaters, HD strips, medium voltage panels. That was a new product from a configurator standpoint, at least. That wasn't migrated. And mica band and mica strip heaters. There's some new things I wanted to point out, and those of you that are currently using the configurator may have noticed about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the interface changed a lot. Oracle introduced a jet responsive interface option. It's a technical term that basically just got rid of the screen jump that everybody disliked. It actually works out much better. It's much easier for Mark and I to do our user interface layouts, and it just looks so much better with that.
Keith, the screen jump was coming the flashing some of us experienced, right?
Yeah, and there was nothing we could do about it. That's just the way the software was made, and I think enough people complained about it, and just users of the configurator from Oracle, and they did something about it.
Nice.
With the new jet interface option, we decided to change the layout of the various configurators. We have kept the same basic layout, and there's some minor differences between them, and that's just because of the product. There's maybe more options or attributes to select, but they all flow pretty much the same. We also used marketing's guidelines for acceptable fonts, colors, logos, and graphics. So it's per Chromalox marketing standards. Some of the things I wanted to point out that I noticed from a user interface standpoint are much better. I'm just going to go through them now. One is the constraint violation messages are much cleaner and more apparent with the new interface. For example, I have a screenshot here of a diameter that exceeds the maximum diameter on a band heater. And in the past, I don't know if you remember, but where it says the minimum allowable diameter for this heater is blah, 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 it would scroll all the way across the screen, and sometimes you couldn't even barely read it. Where now it's very apparent when you get a constraint violation. The other thing that Oracle added were slider controls. Rather than the red buttons push buttons we used to have on there. That again, to make things more apparent what's going on. And you actually see these controls, these sliders more and more on web pages these days. The spinner cursor, this is kind of a minor thing, but I wanted to point it out. In the past, and those of you that use the configurator in the old interface, the previous interface, when you'd hit save, it was really hard to know if it was processing or what was going on. You'd have to look way in the upper left-hand corner of your browser, and different browsers would display the you know, what it was doing. You could see a little spinner up there, but now it's really apparent. If you hit save and the spinner comes up, well, you know, you have to wait 3 or 4 seconds. The other thing we introduced was a similar to functionality. We actually had that in the old Aptean configurator, and we got that integrated for most or pretty much all of the products. You can do a similar to and use an existing design as a boilerplate. The pricing and bill of materials are now at the bottom of the interface. We experimented a little bit with having them on the right side, and it just takes up too much real estate. So as a standard, they will now be at the bottom. We moved from the Autodesk viewer to Autodesk Fusion for displaying 3D images. It's a much more robust viewer. There's more options. You can explode the model. You can download it. There's a lot of things you can do with it. And I mentioned this in the training last time. Long term, we want to be able to parametrically generate designs. So as you configure something like, let's say, an ITLS panel, and you select options, you'll just put it together for you, and then you could possibly download a sales drawing or something in that order. So we're heading in that direction.
And Keith, that's really powerful, because I know for most people in sales that are on the call, the submittal and the initial approval drawing of what you're working on is very powerful, and that just downloads to your downloads on your desktop, right?
Yeah, we'd set it up that way that you could generate it and you could just download it and send it off. So that's the goal.
Excellent.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to give you kind of a nickel and dime tour of each of the new configurators that we've rolled out in the last several months. So that is what I will do next. So many of you have seen this interface. I will just go over logging in again. You just use your username that's been given to you or your supervisor, and it brings you right to this screen. So the first product I'm going to go over is boilers. That's one that we rolled out recently. And I have a component heater background. So when I'm giving a demo of anything other than a component heater, forgive me if I'm putting in values that you wouldn't normally select. As with all the other configurators, you can select by product, data, part number, and in this case, PCNs. We will start by configuring by product. This has all the same selections as the old Aptean configurator. It's now, whenever the design approved slider is enabled, that means that I've fulfilled all the requirements for a valid design. If I would go back and, for instance, let's see, what can I remove here? I got rid of the model, and design approved went away. You can't save it until it's a valid design. Once the design is valid, you will get your summary, like with all other configurators, and you will get a pricing summary at the bottom. So at this point, I will just approve the design, and you can see the spinner now. Yeah, at least you can tell what it's processing. I will now save it. And we got a part number. Again, like our last training session, this demo is in the development environment. We just have random numbers that we use. So if this number doesn't look familiar for a boiler, as with the other products I'm going to show you, that's why. So at this point, I will retrieve it by part number, so I can clear the selections. And then once you retrieve by part number with all the other configurations, also you have to click display price and configuration summary, and then you get your price. And then depending on what group you're in, if you're in an engineering group, you can refresh JDE. That just basically uploads bill of material, router, pricing information again. You can revise it if you're in engineering, or you can create a similar to. And I believe we gave the create similar to anyone. And if I'm wrong, please shoot me an email or ask, bring it up in the question and answer session. So we'll go on to the next product. The next one are the DIN controllers. I will just configure a standard DIN controller.
And that's basically following the catalog page.
Yeah. Yep. Some of our DIN controllers, as probably many of you know, are consignment items, and the configurator will show you, or the slider here will show you if it's a consignment item. I don't know all of them that are consignment items to show you that feature, but it will do it. So at this point, we got our price, our configuration summary. The 4082s, they have a bill of material, so you will see the bill of material at the bottom. This is an example of the new Fusion, Autodesk Fusion 3D viewer. We've now put an option up here if you want to see the image full screen. You can click on that. It goes out to the web. It gets the 3D model. These are pretty simple. These we made in-house. They're not real detailed, but you can do cool things like explode it. Why anybody would want to, but you can. So again, I think this will be a lot more helpful as we go down the road and these things are parametrically created. So the DIN controllers are, they have intelligent part numbers. So I'm going to save this guy. Here's our part number, and we will retrieve it by part number. And in a case of any product with a intelligent part number, you'll notice there is no revise button, because if you revise it, it will change the part number. So you would either do a similar to or just do it from scratch. Oops, sorry about that.
Keith, so your description right there, your configuration summary, is that just something they cut and paste, or does that just export to quote?
That just cuts, you can cut and paste.
Okay.
And well, as you know, as when Sam gives his demo, I doubt anybody will use the configuration summary anymore for cut and paste, but for the time being, they will.
Excellent.
Okay, the next product I'm going to show you are the flexible heaters. As with all the products I'm showing you, I'm just going to configure by product data and then retrieve by part number. We do have wire wound silicon laminate, etch foil silicon laminate, etch foil polyimide. I won't do a drum, I'll just do a rectangle. We'll give it a thermostat and a thermocouple. It generates a model number, gives you the configuration summary, and same as the old Aptian configurator, it gives you it shows you the termination, what that's going to look like, the thermostat, and where the thermocouple is, not where it's located, but what it's going to look like on the heater. This would be a good product to do a parametric design, so you could actually see what the heater would look like with all these options. Down here, you get a price. I'll approve the design and save the design. Got our part number. And retrieve the design with all the options. The next product I'm going to give you a demo on is ITLS, and go ahead.
If you revise this part number, then that stays with that part number, right?
In a case like this, yes. The revision stays with the part number since they're not intelligent part numbers.
Okay.
So
The numeric part number. To be clear.
yes.
What happens if it's been ordered before and somebody tries to put it in there? Will it not let it modify it?
Engineering can revise them. If there's an order for it, you know, the configurator doesn't know that. So if engineering's revising something, there's an order, hopefully whoever's revising it is on top of, you know, what's going on with this particular part. That answers your question.
So that that is not available to sales, or is it?
Revisions?
Yes.
I'd have to take a look. I don't think so. I don't think sales can revise. It's definitely something I can change, but I set that up a long time ago. I mean, I think revising is only.
That would have to be approved through a AE or engineering.
Yeah.
Just to have we'll say a checks and balances on that. Otherwise, you could revise parts that have been bought.
Yeah.
On accident, and then that could create a problem. So that would, you'd create a new quote. If you wanted to revise a specific part number, then that would be done through the engineering department. You wouldn't do that on this. You would do a sum to and generate a new part number. Does that make sense, John?
Yeah, I just thought that would be really dangerous if sales had to.
Exactly. It's more of an engineering function.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go to ITLS next. You can find that under heat trace controls. Configure by product data. Number of circuits,
12.
number of circuits we select up here, the configurator will check to make sure the total that you place down here in the distribution equals the number of circuits. Let's give it a sun shield option. So at this point, I believe, yep, I have everything. It's a valid design. The configurator will let me approve it. Get your configuration summary here. Again, you get a 3D model. This 3D model. This is, like I said earlier, this would be a good example of a parametric 3D model generator because I selected HMI Sun Shield, and the goal is to have it put the HMI Sun Shield right on the 3D model. You get a price, you get a bill of material with these. Bill of materials are a bit lengthy on these. I'll approve the design. Save the design. And there's our part number. Start over, I will retrieve that part number. Display the price and the configuration summary. And again, I'm in the administrator group, and this does not have a intelligent part number, so it can be revised. And there's our price and bill of material again. The next product is the ADHT duct heaters. We'll start over. They're under industrial heaters, and right here. This is definitely a product I'm not real familiar with, so I will probably end up putting some strange values in here. We'll see. Well, here's a good example of the new constraint messages. They're very apparent now. In the past, it would have scrolled across the screen. So I need to put a longer B dimension in there.
And it does it right away. You don't have to wait till the end and find out later.
Yeah, yep. Then it went back here. It does not like the KW value, so I will just put in over 1. And I think I have everything. We got our price, configuration summary, just a basic drawing. Approve the design, save it. And there's our part number.
Hey, Keith,
Yep.
while you're here, you got graphs and charts and engineering in the background on the tab.
Oh, sure. That was in the old configurator also. And I think Chris Molnar asked for that when I was developing this in the old platform years ago.
Mhm.
So I just included it. Thanks for pointing that out, but it's, you can
Okay,
see.
excellent. I mean, it's a good reference to know where it's at and why it's there.
Yep.
Hi, this is Elmer. There's a lot of people that try to find a part number on the internet and try to find a description in the configurator. If the item wasn't originally configured, you won't find a description. Is there a certain series of parts that the configurator generate? Like a part number that starts with a 5 is probably not generated in a configurator.
Are you talking by product or?
Yeah, somebody finds a flange immersion heater on the internet and it has a certain part number and they go into the configurator and try to find a description and it doesn't show up. Of course, it wasn't configured in a configurator, so it won't show up.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if it's not in the configurator, it won't. I guess maybe I don't understand the question. If you're searching for a part, do you know the actual part number, or do you know the attributes that go with it, or?
Right. All you see, you go you search, you find a part number on the internet. It's a flange immersion heater. It says 5006 is something, and they take that part number and put it in the configurator, and it wasn't originally done in the configurator, so it won't show the description. They're trying to find a description of the part.
Oh, yeah. I guess I don't know the answer to that. You know, I'm kind of the configurator person, but yeah, if it's not in there, you won't get your answer from the configurator.
Keith, if this is one of the existing part numbers from standard catalog page, would it show that?
Yeah, for instance, like PCN numbers and on some of our products years ago, we imported all those standard part numbers from the catalog. I think cartridge, we did that for bands, I believe. But yeah, they should be in there, and if they're not, let me know. Have you found cases where they're not, or? I'm not sure where it's at.
Elmer, is that?
Sorry, Director, that was KG. I was just I was checking all the part numbers are loaded in this configurator. There are standard part numbers.
Okay, so you loaded some part numbers that were standard part numbers, or it was?
No, that was just a question. I think I got the answer. Yeah, I haven't tried it yet, but I'll try that.
Okay. Okay, so that's the ADHT duct heaters. I will move on to the high HD strip heaters. They are under Component Technologies, strip and ring. That should be a valid design. Oh, I am missing something. There we go. I guess it was processing. So it is now valid design. I will prove it. And we have our part number. I'll retrieve it by part number. I did one thing I want to point out. You probably notice on some of these, you can look them up by customer part number. That's for our distributors. And if you have a customer part number, you can pull up a design by the customer part number.
For like an OEM.
Yeah. And here's our design. Oh, this isn't a good example. I did not get my price. Oh, sorry, my mistake. Display price configuration summary. There we go. So the next one I'm going to show you are the medium voltage panels. As I mentioned at the beginning, this isn't one that we migrated from the old Aptium platform. This is one we've done from scratch. I think I have been close enough here. I just have selected enclosure. If Richard Tressler is on the call, he would probably point out that this isn't a very good design, but I'm not a medium voltage engineer. But here we got a configuration summary. We still have a few things to do yet with the bill of materials. That's why you don't see the actual enclosure dimensions yet. Richard's given me all the pricing, or Richard and Mark Wheeler, and they recently gave me the bill of material rules. So when this starts generating bill of materials, it will select an enclosure size. So I'll approve the design, save the design. And we have our part number. I'll retrieve by part number. And we have our design back. So the last product I'm going to show you are the mica band and mica strip heaters. They're under Component Technologies, mica band and strip. Allows for a custom gap size. Normally, my experience is there's not a lot of designs that do have a custom gap, but you can change the gap size. It will determine the gap based on the size of the heater. You can see here it knows if it's UL and CSA. I selected term 1 leads or type 1 leads. Put in lead length. We have other options over here for probe hole in the gap, internal heating, which I don't think we do many of those, fiberglass sleeves and thermocouple. And we get a configuration summary, bill of material. It will select the resistance wire. Engineering can pop over the resistance wire data, and if they like, they can override the selected wire. Normally, you don't need to do that normally.
Hey, Keith.
Yes?
This is Renee. I was just wondering if you scroll down where the third party rating is.
Yep.
I noticed early when I was designing something earlier, you can click on that little lock. Does that actually do anything? Do you need to click on that for it to be applied to the heater, or?
No, I that's a good question. I've noticed it before too. I have no clue what it does.
Okay.
Yeah. So I should look that up and actually see what it does. But
Yeah, I didn't know if you needed to like click that for them to actually stamp it on the heater, or
Oh,
if
no.
that did anything or not. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it's something in the software, the configure platform. But if I figure it out, Renee, I'll shoot you an email.
Okay, thank you.
So save the design. Our part number. And we have our design back. So that is all for the new configurators. There's 8 of them that we rolled out since last training. Like I mentioned, we are now up to 12. Derek, I'm going to jump forward.
Sure. We'll stop there for 1 second, Keith.
Okay.
Just to point out to everyone, you said there's 12. There's links in the old configurator that take you to the new configurator, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to point that out to everyone.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Okay.
Derek, this is Keith Piker. I had a couple of questions for Keith
Mm-hmm.
on the new configurator. So just the first one is more of an overall design question. Compared to the old configurator, there were some parts that there was a lot of tabs. You'd have pages and pages of tabs that you have to go to different pages and fill in. Are you, from a design perspective, you're kind of moving away from that concept where it's just one big long page, or what's your?
You're probably thinking of possibly like flange heaters or circulation.
Yes.
Yeah. Mark Hagmeyer is working on those, or he will be, and I think he'll be able to answer that further down the road. But I would prefer that, if if we can get more information on one page rather than going tab to tab. But
Okay. And then with the ones that you've done, well, compared to the old configurator, sometimes if there was a conflict or there might be messages at the bottom of the page, which depending on the user, and their screen resolution, sometimes you wouldn't see the messages down below saying, oh, you're missing this, or there's a conflict of this. The way that the user, sees any messaging from the system that they have to do something or they did something wrong, where will that be? Will that be on the field that they were supposed to be entering information, or is there an area of the screen where there might be messages?
yeah, that's I'll just pop back and I can show you an example.
Yeah, it's on the field. There you go.
Yeah, it's right here. The constraint violations now are right on the field. So it's a lot more apparent than the way it used to be in the Oracle configurator and, to your point, in the Aptian configurator, because those messages do show up at the bottom in Aptian and they're not very apparent. So
yeah, they would show up at the bottom, but then, from the user, sometimes you have to think about, well, what does that mean? What tab is that associated with? Like what field within which tab is it for? So now the conflict will be right there in red, I guess.
Yep, they'll be right on the field. So.
And then, or maybe, someone else will get to this, but in the configuration summary, the graphic, you sort of touched on it before, is any of that usable that we could make that a deliverable at the moment, or that's something down the road?
Well, Sam's going to be giving a good demo that'll answer part of your question, but yeah, it's usable right now. It's basically the same configuration summary that was in the Aptian platform, and you can copy and paste it.
Okay.
But
okay.
I think your answer you'll get a better answer when Sam gives a demo here in a couple minutes.
Great, thank you.
That's a good segue.
So before I turn it over to Sam, just to let you know what's next. We are working on a new homepage. The existing homepage is pretty blah, but we want to make it very helpful. And I had a quick illustration made here to the right, and we just want helpful hints, things like, if I get some questions once in a while, it's like, oh, it'd be good to communicate that with everyone. I want a link for Mark and I are the primary developers at the moment. Sam's joining us for some other products, but a lot of times Mark will get an email with a question for a product that I maintain and vice versa. So we're going to try to organize that a bit better, and then just have it more visual, like down here at the bottom, featured products. And that's not the term we would use, but just a more visual approach. So that's coming down the road. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Sam. Sam has learned this software by the seat of his pants. He didn't get any training on it other than what I've shown him, and he's done a really, really good job with it. So Sam, you're next.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Keith. As has kind of been alluded to a little bit so far on the call, I've had the chance to work on a little bit of a kind of proposal generation tool that's going to be in this platform. So I just wanted to kind of take a moment to review that a little bit with you guys and see what it's going to look like. It is not quite ready yet, but we are getting close. So we wanted to take this moment to kind of show you what's coming up. This is just a quick little kind of give you an idea of what our thoughts were here. So the idea here is to have a document be generated by the configurator that is a bit of a proposal or a kind of a doc submittal for higher dollar value items. These tend to be IH&S products, circulation heaters, duct heaters, boilers, related panels, things of that nature. It's not to say that this might not be functional for, smaller components later on, but customers tend to be happy with a few description lines on a comment on a quote, but may not be as satisfied if it's a $50,000 circuit heater. So that's the idea here. This is, just to be clear, not going to replace the extranet e-quote, much in the same way as if you would to submit a quote to applications engineering, they would return the e-quote to you and then give you like a long form quote. This is going to be kind of like a long form quote, but just for configurable items. And it's going to be something that the Salesforce is going to be able to generate, on their own. So this will be kind of an alternate configuration summary format. And it's also going to help you avoid copying and pasting really long descriptions into the line comments on the extranet. Anyone who's tried to copy and paste a circuit heater description into the comment section has seen that error at the bottom there. So this will kind of help you avoid that. So yeah, if you want to go ahead, Keith, we'll take a look at what that's going to look like. So as Keith just showed you guys, when you complete a configuration, you say the design has been approved. You go to save the design, and then you're going to get a part number that is generated. And then once that part number is generated, you're going to have a button on the top right-hand corner of your screen. It's not there yet, but it will be. It's going to say add to quote. And just to be clear, this is not going to add to your quote on the extranet. You're going to have to copy and paste that part number over and get a line on the extranet. This is going to add to a sort of configurator transaction or configurator quote, if you will. So after you click that add to quote button, next slide, the part number that you just configured is going to be added to this transaction screen, and the page is going to look like this. It's going to kind of have the similar flavor to what's on the extranet quote. You're going to see the part number, you're going to see the list price, things of that nature. And you are also going to have to input a few fields yourself. And that's on the next slide. So there's a few user editable fields on here, namely the quote number. That'll be right from extranet, from your eQuote. You are going to have to put in any applicable discount, as well as quantity if it's not one. And then you'll have an opportunity to save your transaction. And then once you have done that, you will also have the opportunity to add additional line items to the transaction. So for example, if you configured a circuit heater and then you wanted to go back and put a panel on here, you'll have the opportunity to do that by clicking the add line item button. And then once you have all of the line items for your quote into the transaction, there's going to be a button at the top of the screen along the ribbon. It says generate proposal. And that's going to be the document output that we're kind of referencing here. And I just wanted to put a couple screenshots on here and kind of give you an idea of what it's going to look like. There's going to be a bit of a cover page here. Say, hey, thanks for choosing Chromalox. I'll have the salesperson's name on it. And again, this is all going to be generated automatically by the kind of background program that we've developed. So the quote number that shows up on here, it's going to be the user enter quote number from the previous page. So yeah, that's what the cover page is going to look like. And then on the next slide, we have, this will be the second page of the output. It's going to have a little bit of a table of contents, what line numbers you had on the transaction, net prices, quantities, and then a net total. And then after this, you'll see kind of page by page from the lines that you had on the transaction. This is going to generate data sheets for each of those products. And the data sheets basically, you saw a boiler one, and this is one for a duct heater. They are the same information that is on the configurator summary. They're just a little bit cleaner, kind of a little bit more visual. They're in a kind of a table format. See, they'll have some electrical specs, some dimensions, some options, and then we're doing what we can to get a photo included, just to give customers an idea of what they're buying. Yeah, so if you want to hop to the next slide, then We also, at the very end, if you guys have seen some of the long quotes that AE submits, there'll be a kind of terms and conditions section. So we wanted to make sure that we had that on here too. A lot of this information is similar flavor to what's on extranet as well, just a little bit more detailed. Because again, you know, when you start getting into the 5 or 6 figure quote range, customers might tend to like to see this kind of stuff, and we can clear things up right away as opposed to getting more questions. So that's what the commercial terms will look like. And then we also have a little bit of a field service options section too at the end. This will look very similar to what's on the AE long quote. I essentially copied it right off of that. So yeah, so that's kind of what's coming. Like I said, right now we're really focused on the IH&S larger dollar amount products that are going to have more complicated descriptions and situations where customers might like to see a data sheet instead of just a bulleted list of details. Coming up, we are going to be releasing this soon, but it's not quite yet. We have a couple things we need to sort out still. And like I said, we are going to release products as the configurators are completed. So for example, circuit heaters are not done right now, but we kind of have it framed out. Once circuit heaters are done, we'll get the data sheets populated and it'll become available pretty shortly thereafter. And we will have a little bit more of a formal training session, you know, once this is all ready to be rolled out. So that's what I got, and I'll send it back over to Keith to kind of wrap this up. And yeah, thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks, Sam. And like I said, Sam's done an incredible job with this, with minimal training. He's overcome every obstacle, and I would think for a young guy, your hair is probably gray already from working on this, Sam, but you've done a really good job.
Thanks. Maybe a little bit.
So before we wrap it up from a configurator standpoint, the following products are going to be migrated next. Mark Hagmeyer is working on the OCE LTFX, and of course, I've been kind enough to encourage Mark to do the tougher configurators while I take the easy ones. I'm working on cartridge heaters right now. Mark and I, during our training, started on sensors, and we are going to work with Sam and have him finish up the sensors. So I don't have any firm dates for these yet for rollout, but they're on the horizon.
Excellent.
So I'll turn it over to you, Derek.
Okay, Keith. Again, Keith, Sam, thank you so much. We'll open up for questions here in 1 second. I do want to thank everyone for being on the call. We kind of just started doing trainings again this year. You know, we're all using Teams now a lot more. I'd encourage you to check that out. But I did want to point out to everyone while we had the opportunity for, you know, these trainings, the trainings last year, even going back to 2018, there are literally hundreds of trainings available between, you know, design to sales to, you know, marketing programs. So I encourage all of you to go out and look for those and you know, for consumption. One such program that we just finished up is the Pick and Chip. Mark Wheeler, Rob Coburn, and Dave Taylor and myself all presented on this. This is the Pick and Chip for distributors. Look for that. The leads have been sent out, and the RTSMs are working those through now. And next month we've got some controls training, some success stories from Dean. I've already been talking to him, and some more stuff already on the way. Those invites are out. I'll send out another newsletter next week, and obviously look for those. So with that, I will end the, we'll say, recorded portion of the presentation and open it up for questions.
Hey, Derek.